I'm Dane Rose, Chairman of Happiness Data, and welcome to this episode of 10x Nonprofit. And in this area, or video, I'll be exploring 10x fundraising. Now, in an integrated system model, you have distinctions such as reducing money for overhead and raising money for the nonprofit. But these are in some ways artificial distinctions, because in the video that I just made about reducing overhead, the less overhead there is, the more people are willing to donate. And so in the best possible model, the fundraising consists of effectively presenting a reality in which a number of things occur, in which the nonprofit is positioned to have a significant impact on human well-being. Meaning, we want to have more spotted zebras in the Sahara zone in Africa because it would be a nice idea. Wonderful. We want to reduce the air quality in Los Angeles schools and reduce asthma rates by 20%. A little bit more practical or focused on human well-being. We want to create a contingency plan in the event of an asteroid, and there's a 1 in 1,000% chance of an asteroid. The first goal in marketing, particularly to an informed population, is to effectively position the nonprofit to serve human well-being in an intelligent way. Number one. Number two, having shown that human well-being will be dramatically benefited by the nonprofit existing, the next level of marketing is to show a compelling evidence that the nonprofit has a science-based plan that achieves the goal. Meaning, we're going to launch balloons and hope, to bump into the asteroid and push it away, versus we're going to have nuclear missiles aimed at every contact from every content that can be launched with sensors out in this to attack an asteroid, and they're ready just for that purpose. The confidence level is, of course, much higher in the latter approach. So spelling out the protocol, the response that the nonprofit is taking to that challenge or that crisis. Number two, why that response versus the other approaches, so that you're simultaneously educating the population. And you're particularly wanting to target the people who are the committed fans, the committed zealots that will, spend large amounts of volunteer time, money, etc., to help with that issue as opposed to just intellectualize it. So what is the nonprofit strategy for helping with that issue? Why that strategy versus all the other options available? This needs to be spelled out for two reasons. One, to make sure that the nonprofit has done its due diligence within itself, as opposed to just falling into groupthink or global think, as people say that's the thing, so we're just going to do it without doing our own science and evaluations. The goal should be that someone reading that data would conclude that the strategy used by the nonprofit to achieve that goal is the single most efficient way to do that and the most effective way to do that, or it should be something else, meaning that the strategy should be different if it's not the most efficient and effective way of achieving that result, and that should be spelled out. This dramatically increases confidence. Now then, the third level of selling is reducing overhead. So you've got the most efficient system in the world for deterring an asteroid, great. And 50% of your money is spent raising money and paying your bookkeepers and doing this and this and this, and only 50% of your money is being spent on the strategy. Versus another nonprofit which has a slightly less effective strategy, meaning it's 20% less efficient, but 98% of their money goes towards the strategy. So even though they're using a less efficient strategy because they have less than 2% overhead, they're actually achieving the goal more efficiently in total per dollar invested than the nonprofit with 50% overhead. You get that principle. So then we come into then the focus on reducing that number, so that in that, if you listen to the accounting video, if you go through the entire spreadsheet of the organization, and everything that is pinned as an overhead is everything that is directly not being spent as efficiently as possible to achieve the goal, to alleviate human well-being. Bookkeeping does not alleviate human well-being. Tax preparation does not alleviate human well-being. Taxi cars for executives does not alleviate human well-being. And so this is, I think, a very important number to have all those labeled as overhead. And the algorithm itself will generate in real time the actual overhead of that organization, as opposed to it being a hypothesis or a statement that may or may not correlate with the actual books of that year. This is also then a great, when this is transparent, it encourages healthy competition within the nonprofit sector to have the lowest overhead in the industry. And when you give awards for that, encourages healthy competition, which in turn ensures that more money is effectively spent. So we then come to the next part of marketing, which is more flexibility, not only in, we already talked about things like accepting cryptocurrency, accepting PayPal, accepting credit cards without fees is part of the reduced overhead. When people learn they can use a credit card and will not pay, 2% of the money won't go to a credit card, it will go to the nonprofit, that boosts motivation to give. But the other thing is harnessing time, meaning there are any number of nonprofits where if I ask them how I could spend an intelligent 3 hours and benefit that nonprofit, they do not have any idea, which means that they're not interested in my time, which means they're not interested in my talent, which means they're not interested in me. Well, I'm way more interested and motivated in spending larger sums of money if I can see the results and I can volunteer and have this impact. If I'm able to take on a project, like gather information in my town about this, I'm going to pay for my own taxis, I'm going to do this and that and the other, and I might spend $500 volunteering time for a given project, but I have confidence and visceral sense of, and I'm learning and I'm changing and I'm engaging and I feel a part of it. And when that organization or that project needs another $100 or so, I'm much more motivated to engage and to give. So not only is there a possibility of potentizing a nonprofit by accepting time, but it also challenges vision, because there are a heck of a lot of talented and interesting people out there that one cannot imagine. So holding space for people, talented people, and saying, these are all the different chores, these are all the different projects, these are all the different technologies and dreams that we have as an organization, that if you can deliver this in this format and in this way, do it. If you can bring us these are the research details we're interested in. These are the best practices we want to improve further. Who can help us? This is the software we'd like to improve. Any software engineers out there? And if you can create at least 100 doorways through which people can volunteer, and again, build that into the software, that you have to meet certain criteria determined by the software, this frees up time and empowers volunteers, while simultaneously a volunteer who's more engaged will be more committed and more willing to donate money. Now, there's another part of this volunteer thing that is also part of fundraising, and that is, for example, as a donor, if I receive a handmade card from a 10-year-old thanking me for my donation, I feel more personally touched than just an official greeting from a nonprofit. But obviously the nonprofit, it's inefficient for them to go out and hire 10-year-olds. And obviously a 10-year-old is less likely to have money for a nonprofit. But this is where you see a synergy emerging, where, for example, if the statistics show that 80% of the donors who receive a card from a 10-year-old saying, I'm a school children, I'm 10 years old, this is my name, thank you for making your donation, Mr. So-and-so, and that means a lot to me and my generation. Love so-and-so, and that gets sent off from that child. If the people receiving that card are 80% more likely to donate, and the person writing the card is 80% more likely to be involved with the issue and feel important and that they matter and feel like they're making a difference, and show up and volunteer in bigger ways for that nonprofit later on. And if there are tens of thousands of 10-year-olds who, if given the chance to make a handwritten card for a donor, would love to do that, but certainly wouldn't spend their lunch money on that nonprofit, then you have the opportunity to accept volunteers to thank donors as one of the dozens of ways to volunteer. And then the volunteer pays for the stamp and directly mails a donor something, and any child that wants to volunteer and partner with schools and things like that just gets the address and sends a check. They send a photo of the letter they sent to the donor, to the nonprofit, which then releases the address. You've got the card and the thing, so you take a photo, you submit, you receive the address, you write the address and take a photo of that, and then you get an award as a child through the algorithm. You've now helped so-and-so to contribute to this project, which is going to be this, and then the child can track the impact in their classroom, etc. Now you've got participation. Now when the child comes home excited and proud to the parent, now you're boosting parental motivation to, oh, that's interesting. Maybe I'll make a donation, and then my child will thank me for my $20. So you have a ripple effect. So we're still on the topic of it's all designed by value. We're making it lower and lower friction. more and more engaging and informative, more and more choices, more and more value. Now, this is all this area of design. Now, the question is that I think for sales in the nonprofit sector to grow moves into, again, partnering in this arena. I think that there is great value in partnering within 1,000 to 3,000 nonprofits to digitize and metric a shared newsletter, a shared magazine that talks about success stories, improvements in the nonprofit sector, and who does what well. Who's achieved the lowest overhead for things, who's achieved the most value in childhood self-esteem, that the different topics that are identified as being relevant, and then the different players within those fields can differentiate themselves based on a scientific algorithm, and that be presented as a basis where a single mailing for all of those nonprofits go out, and within that catalog, people can see what values they identify with. And with QR codes and web pages be directed to that nonprofit where this legend of effectiveness can take over. And I think that rather than being barraged by junk mail and competing catalogs and things from, dozens of nonprofits, to have more than 1,000 nonprofits categorized, an index based on subjects. So that if you're interested in this, you type this. And this can also be an app, Effective Donor, an app called Effective Donor, where this one app is advertised with and it's done in informative ways. The science of donating, the people who are most helped, what we're doing to help more human beings in more and more ways, how we're accepting donations, so that rather than having 3,000 different nonprofits all spinning their little 10-second soundbite, that we have 20-minute infomercials, in-depth article writing, support for journalists, so that trends within the nonprofit sector can be turned into good articles, and that this is one of the areas that people can volunteer, that anyone can volunteer to write an article focused on different niche aspects and trends, and then submit that, and then protocols for submitting that to the various publications where the public is engaged, so that fundraising as a direct focus of a nonprofit can go down to almost nothing, while the actual funds coming in can double to quadruple, because it's a much more compelling proposition. And towards that last thing, the personal impact that something has, which I referenced briefly in the kind of accounting module of that software and flowchart, I think is one of the single most important things that can be done to increase repeat fundraising. We have chemicals in our body that make us feel good when we can visualize and viscerally experience certain things that we may not be able to do if, like when I gave the $200 to Amnesty. I have some vague picture of barbed wire fences, vague protests, hints of red, little bits clouding through some of the literature I've read with Amazon, but that's all my body relates to. I have no face in mind. I have a lot of questions and hesitancy. But imagine a flow chart in which that $200 entered in and in which I could watch it and get alerts. It's moved into Amazon's bank account. Now they've allocated it here. They've sent it to Rwanda for this reason. Rwanda, in the next 30 days, is going to lose, 50,000 women are going to be beheaded or whatever if they did. So it's moved there to try and stop that. It's being spent this way, and this way. And it didn't stop it. This happened instead, and so that, was lost. And these are some of the people who died. And this is what happened, and this is what we learned from it. And the next time this happens, we're going to spend money in this way, and this way, and this way. And if I'm taken along that journey, I've got a visceral reaction with the whole thing. Or let's take my recent donation to a tree company, planting trees. So it was $1 a tree. And I don't know who planted the trees. I don't know what species of tree. I don't know where they went. I don't know how long that type of tree has to grow before, my goal was to be CO2 neutral. I think I worked out that if I planted 250 trees, I would, which cost $1 each, I would be CO2 neutral. That was the goal. But I don't know what type of trees. I don't know how long each tree is going to take to generate CO2. Now, these are things that, again, relying on the volunteer aspect, can be plugged in as an algorithm. So that, again, we have a full SD card, and with the full SD card, an unexpected interruption. And so let's continue loosely along the thread that we just lost. If we can get the 250 trees that I planted to be located on a GPS, and much more importantly, if we can have a software program where all of the different possibilities and emphasized probabilities are open as ports, so that there can be a timeless sense of fulfilling this complete picture. A timeless sense is, showing the inception, showing the motivations, bringing in the human element. For example, if we have a software that allows the location, the time stamping, the ability to upload and update new information. Now we have a scenario where, for example, my 250 trees are spruce pine, where I get an update every year to 5 years, depending on my preference, and says, your 250 spruce pine trees are now, as a statistic, meaning the average spruce pine tree will be generating X amounts of CO2. You're now under, as a seedling, you're now under your carbon neutral emission level. You're expected to reach that point in 5 or 10 years, assuming there are no forest fires, or etc. Now, 5 or 10 years later, you get a reminder. Hooray! You have now hit your level. We have not heard any information about a fire in this area, etc., etc. Or you're out of luck. There was a forest fire. So, and your 250 trees that were located on this acre of land have been wiped out. Back to square one in the game of becoming a sustainable human being. And what gets really interesting is when this gets mapped out into, a larger framework where it's a game, where we're playing a game, where every human being is making a net positive impact on the global ecosphere. Technological advances in the right fields, which actually lead to more human well-being as opposed to more human destruction. Reducing the carbon footprint, creating a net positive carbon footprint. Generating or cleaning up more chemicals than generated. Recycling and transforming more materials than thrown in a landfill. So you get the game, and this can be tracked. And, your score as you progress through life. And, there's going to be times when you go downhill in that score, maybe the time you build a house, etc. But then can you come up, and can you die having a net positive impact on all metrics? And there's, of course, different ways to play the game. There's the award for net positive impact on all metrics. But what we're doing here, what I'm doing here in this paradigm pivot, is I'm going away from you and I as the nonprofit in a specialized area to the user. Because the user doesn't care about you and I. They didn't wake up and say, let's see how we can make Dane Rose have a higher balance statement on his nonprofit. They didn't say, let's help the nonprofit sector. But they might just say, let's see how I'm doing on my game to become carbon neutral, my game to become to reach the diamond grade in the human population for contributing valuable information on multiple fields that helps the species. This is my core game. And then within that paradigm of that game, which is a profound service to provide the game. You see, no one's providing our individuals with the game. Now, to play the game at this level of sophistication requires deep partnering and deep thinking within the nonprofit sector. And that's compelling, and that's marketing. When someone can go down to Radio Shack and, buy an iPad or, whatever, and, have a little bit of, okay, fine. Some marketers have colluded and made it easier to market something, or Apple has made it a little easier to, or a little worse in recent years to use their product. Then you've got the possibility of a compelling inspiration to play, to engage. It's a little bit like Philip here, who's competing for attention. If I can offer Philip a game, a little bit of energy, excitement, surprise, an interesting smell, he's right in there. But to provide that game shows a level of vision that is remarkable, that induces respect, that induces confidence, because the level of consciousness required for 2,000 or 3,000 nonprofit organizations to collaborate to help any individual on the planet win the game of the human species is a level of consciousness that is interesting, that by definition is miles above the myopic thought of, I want to feel good about myself, making a difference, or I want to save the trees in my neighborhood and you should help me because it's a good idea. And so, let's all converge on you from hundreds of different directions and I'll tell you why you should help us and give us some money. And then we just vanish because we've gotten our needs met and you're left in the dust. It's like, okay, they show up when they want something and then they vanish. And I haven't a clue exactly what they're spending the money on, or is that a good practice, or is that the best way to do it, or did they get... I haven't a clue. Do they know how to run a bit? I mean, I don't know. And, what about my daughter? I could have bought her a game. I could have... You see, I'm not positive, and it's not integrating. You see, but with the game concept, I can now give my daughter a game. We can now bring our family together. It's not tearing us apart, my daughter's braces, or so-and-so wants me to save the rainforest, and so-and-so else, wants me to, help kids with blindness, and so-and-so else wants me to feed the hungry, and someone... and it's like, well, what's the boundary? I've got to draw a line somewhere, but where is it? Just everyone go away because I don't want to be bothered by 3,000 people all focused on their own little myopia. And none of them are actually paying attention to me. They don't know what I'm interested in. They waste all this money on junk mailings and, send me pictures of starving children. What are they up to? Are they just wasting my money on marketing? Did they fly a photographer way off to find the ugliest child? What's going on here? And so this is, the myopia of we need your money to run our organization. That's an easy level of consciousness. That's the normal level of traumatized, survival-oriented human consciousness. Nothing terribly compelling there. It's not like, wow, let's talk about that at dinner. Another nonprofit wanted some money. Wow, what a surprise. It's boring. It's tired. And more importantly, it's not even engaging the client. Remember, the equation, going back to video 1, is maximizing human well-being sustainably, as efficiently as possible. Now, that includes the donor. If donors end up feeling worse, inadequate, stressed, unseen, because of our activities in the nonprofit sector, then we may just be trading all of our donors' well-being for the hopeful or probable well-being of some other source. That's not as compelling a design as a design that uplifts the donor in the process of uplifting an environment that in turn uplifts other people, which in turn uplifts the donor, which in turn uplifts us. You see, that's a more compelling design. And it takes a higher level of awareness and sophistication to create that design than it does to ask for money for our pet cause. So I think a big question within marketing is, are we willing as individuals to be compelling? And are we willing as nonprofit participants, as a functioning field of energy, to be compelling in our complexity and our design? Because compelling designs, as Apple has demonstrated repeatedly, compelling designs, as Samsung has done a much better job recently of demonstrating, compelling designs produce customers, produce clients. You know, when something is so beautifully done, again, Tesla, the Model 3, when something is so beautifully done, you want to be a part of it because it's compelling. It's not just 10% better. It's 1,000% better. It's 10 times better. It's quieter. It's safer. It saves the environment. It's more fun. It's a better conversation piece. It's more comfortable. It's self-driving. It takes me off the grid. It's more integrated. It increases in value with time due to the upgrades. And it opens up future possibilities. You see, when you do that, you compel value. When 10x thinking is involved, you compel value. Now, this is why Tesla is not advertising. Not a single ad on TV, and not a single ad necessary for them to get more than 500,000 deposits for the right to buy a Tesla Model 3. Now, when the nonprofit sector can offer a product that is so compelling that 500,000 people will line up and make a deposit for the right to be the first to donate, to participate in the game of becoming, a diamond level member of the species. And it's broken out where we look at health, and health has multiple levels. Getting rid of core diseases, getting rid of core disabilities, having the surgeries, taking the medicine, etc. Next, getting your family out of core diseases and core disabilities, and etc. Next, helping another family do the same. So you have the health track. Well, now you're at the diamond level on the health track. You've gotten you and your family out of, the suffering and poverty of disease. And you've now taken that to the next level where, because of you, you're mentoring, you're donating, you're etc. Another family has now reached this level that you signed on and sponsored that family to reach that level. And now your community is stronger because you and other people and that family is now, and now you've seen, in the crappy pyramid schemes, there's really nothing of value at the end, and everyone cajoles everyone so that a few people can get rich. In the pyramid scheme of species evolution, the game is huge. You get a healthy community if you can get the person who you sponsored to sponsor another person. If people can get reward points, if people earn social status by the level of transcendence they demonstrate. And if, and this becomes a ubiquitous game, a ubiquitous app, where you'd want to date someone who's got diamond level species, game score. And I'm just riffing with you here. We're making this up as we go. But if we can reach diamond level on a species game that has metrics, where someone who's looking for a date wants someone who's making progress. So you've got different metrics. What's the speed at which you're becoming a diamond level human being? Because if you're starting with leukemia and poverty in Lithuania, with, poor parents and your brother had AIDS. If that's your starting point, and you've gotten all the way towards, you just don't have leukemia anymore, or whatever, that may be a 10,000% growth rate. And Warren Buffett would much rather invest in a stock that's, trading for pennies, etc., and that went from being valued at 1 penny to being valued at 10 pennies through sustained intelligent management. Buffett doesn't buy, the high rollers, etc. up at the top. It's value investing. And so if you can turn a penny into 10 pennies, that's far more impressive than turning $1 billion into $1.2 billion. If you can do it at scale, if it's about the quality of design and discipline. And these things can be awarded and measured. The consistency of interaction, persistence, the growth rate of change, your intelligence of design and commitment, the mile markers that you've gotten to, real tangible goals, the way you're showing balance, the degree that you're helping others, transcendence. Are you immediately, even as you're, have improved your own life by 200%, have you already helped others, or do you wait until your life gets up to the, 10,000% improvement and then, move on to others? So there's all kinds of metrics, and we haven't given clients the game of 10x living, 10x species evolution. And what's our role in that game? Because now, within this game structure, nonprofits can compete for the right to help in a given segment of the game. As soon as a client says, my goal is to become carbon neutral this year, you pop up into view. You want to become carbon neutral? I can plant a tree for 50 cents. I can plant a tree for $1, and the growth rate is 80% more reliable, meaning 80% of the trees I plant live. Only 40% the ones for 50 cents live. Okay, so you're on an even playing field in terms of statistical impact. You can compete on data to help people achieve their goal. And you can compete on impact, because going back to the tree analogy, where you going through a forest, you've planted your 250 spruces, and in 10 years, if they do well, you're now 80% carbon neutral. In 20 years, they are now producing so much, CO2. They're producing so much oxygen into the atmosphere and absorbing so much of the CO2 that they're starting to eat up your childhood consumption before you made the donation, and so they're doing well. But you can, in the game strategy, say how many forest fires there are, what's the probable likelihood that your trees would get wiped out, and what's your defense strategy. For example, if you do all your 250 trees in one forest, then if there's a forest fire there, you're back to square one. So maybe you want to diversify your tree portfolio, where you do some in Brazil and some here and some here, so that you have a backup plan if there's a nuclear reaction, and this is part of the game. You get thing like scientists at current levels, the top 3 scientists estimate that there is a 30% probability that one of these locations will have a nuclear attack. There's a 10% probability that there's going to be a forest fire in the next 100 years, which means you're playing 50-50 odds. So to be 100% certain that you're carbon neutral, you're going to have to do 250 trees here, 250 trees here and 250 trees there, and you've got a less than 1% chance of failing to be carbon neutral. So you've brought those odds down to almost nothing. Well, this is exciting. Now, and it's exciting to play in real time and with real stuff. So you have maybe, so within the game, you have location, you have type of tree, you have seedling health and age rate, you have types of soil and the odds of those trees surviving in that type of soil. And you have the ability to fund up your option, you see, because you could say, add some topsoil to my trees. Yes, I know it's in rocky desert. I know 80% of all trees die as seedlings planted in rocky desert. I want my trees to have a 30% better odds. And so I want an extra shovelful of soil. So we're going to, rather than $1 a piece, we're going to pay $3 a piece so that my trees get some soil. And I want to know how they're doing. I will pay someone for updates. Or someone can earn ecological points for updates. Now, how does this work? You're walking through the forest, you've got your little gadget there, and you get a thing, 10 points available. What are the 10 points? There's a clump of trees 50 feet over to the right that so-and-so, diamond level player, etc., planted 20 years ago. If you update him with the photo of his trees, you get 20 ecological points. Okay, you go over, done, 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 done. This now gets part of the game profile. These are my trees. They're real. They're growing. We've now got an updated game. And here's where this is tying into marketing. The more real, the more visceral, the more experiential something is, the healthier people behave. Why? Despite the absurdity of Western lineal education that thinks it's all about language and it's all about the left lineal brain and that people should have deep biological reactions to a decimal point, because that's what human beings are when you look at global death rates and things. They're decimal points. Our biology does not respond to decimal points. Our biology responds to human beings. It responds to sensation. We have mirror neurons that if we're right next to a child being beaten, we do something about it. And when we hear that $2 could help a child's beating cease, we see $2 and we don't see the face of that child and we don't take action. We are as sociopathic as we are abstract. What makes the human response effective is making the data real. And abstractions, this is a face of one child in one country somewhere. And by the way, your money isn't actually going to go to that child. It's just a representation we did for marketing purposes. It's not compelling. But you've got an actual person here. And then you start looking at synergy options. You have a needy family that you want to help and you get to know, and you start helping them, and then you want to help your carbon footprint. And so you ask the family to plant 250 trees for you. And you've done both things. You've taught them about ecology, you've helped a family that needs more income, and you've planted trees, and then you have an intimate relationship with those trees in their garden, in their land, in the wild, in the forest, etc. See, you can start creating synergies. Or you've got one family and then there's another family that needs help, and you help this family go through the game where you help them become self-sufficient with $250 of capital, start a business, sustain a business, be mentors to that business, and then you help them help their neighbor start a business and become sufficient. in a way that deepens the teaching and mentoring. It always integrates the teaching to teach. These are the areas that are so exciting that your life is empty, relatively speaking, rather than playing a game like this. And when we can say to a client that the health, the mental, emotional health, that depression rates go down in Americans who play our game by 30%, that sustainability in the people who play our game goes up 80%. When we can say that the joy of interacting goes up 50%, when we can say that gratitude for our everyday lives goes up 300%, as we're video conferencing with a family, etc., that, pisses in a hole and, hammers bananas into flour and, whatever it is. And they're appreciating what we've accomplished, and we realize, wow, we've actually have accomplished something. I feel completely inadequate, like I'm working through 3 jobs and not getting anywhere and da-da-da-da-da. I feel that way. But by Jove, I've actually got the ability to make coffee. I have a toothbrush. I have snacks. A novelty, or I have a car. Wow, this is an amazing thing. You see, and so there's a way of dramatically improving the quality of life. Now, when you improve the quality of life for a donor, for a client, and the donors are the clients, when you improve the quality of life for the client, you're looking primarily on the psychological dimensions, mental and emotional, which in turn create neural peptides, endorphins, etc., that then change the health of the client. So you're working on the psychological level. We're looking at issues like meaning, significance, value, adequacy, presence. When someone lights up, oh, this is the donor who's calling us on Skype, or whatever. When someone lights up around that, or and is happy to see you, there's a sense of message. Oh, I'm okay. It meets that Maslow's 3rd hierarchy need of love and belonging. And we're not doing that on any level. And this is a compelling game. Now, I know this as a client, because when I ask questions of any of this nature, of any of the nonprofits that I want to give money to, I hear something and I think, oh, I'd love to give money in this way or in this way, or I'd love to know what's going on, or what kind of trees are they, or where are they going, or could you do this to me, or what do you think about this idea? And there's silence. I think I'm dealing with a Neanderthal-level nonprofit. They don't know how to evaluate ideas. How effectively are they going to be spending my money? They're not visioning. They're not thinking. So do I want non-thinking people, spending my money? Because I can do something with it myself. I've got my own nonprofit that, and I want to have it go to people that are thinking, that people are evolving, that people are asking the questions that really matter. So to summarize, within the marketing arena, we have the movement towards kinetic, visceral engagement at all levels. Now, this can be taken graphically into as detailed a process as possible. You can do a packet of energy where I send $3, and at any given point, I can click track and it shows where my $3 are. It's now entered this pile. The pile is $200 million big. Here's where my little $3 is in that pile. Now the pile is moving out, going off into different places. Here's what's happening to my $3. Here's it's going over here. It's going to this. Now it's $2.50 because the overhead of this, that, and the other, and the credit card processing fee of the $3. Now it goes out here. And now it's bought 2 trees. And the trees are going in here. And it's having an update. And now it's generating this amount of oxygen. And then we're back to square one with the forest fire in that area. And then we're replanting trees, but that requires more money. Do you want to replace your trees so that you're again carbon neutral? This kind of thing in a very tangible way. Here's what they look like. You can zero in on Google Maps. These are the coordinates if you want to see your trees. And what we have when you have all these ports of data open, this can be done retroactively, meaning a nonprofit can start and show this data, and then a volunteer can come online and fill in the data. I could say I would like to volunteer to walk around Yosemite, and I will give updates on every people's planted trees in Yosemite. And someone else volunteers, I'd like to volunteer to be in this other park, and I will give updates. And everyone gets to see images of their trees or images of a family. So-and-so's family got a business investment on Kiva, 2 years ago. What happened to them? Did they get killed in a car accident? Were they pushed over by cancer? What happened to those people? Where are they? Well, here they are living, and this is their story. This is how that $250 affected this person and this person over time. And the data points get filled in using crowdsourcing. Everyone playing the game can help other people play the game. Now we're looking at a feeling of community. We're looking at a species that is inspirational. Every relationship in, I write books on romance and healthy relationships. And one of the best ways, or one lens to look through in the idea of a sustainable romantic relationship. Here's one metric, and it's an important one. If you can help your partner feel better about themselves with you than they do with any other person in their life, that's a keeper. That's a sustainable relationship. If a person feels better about themselves when they're alone, or better about themselves when they're with another person, or with another group, or in another country, people gravitate towards the environments, and relationships are a context. They are an environment. People gravitate towards relationships that bring out the best in them, because then they like themselves, and that's what it's all about. When we look at ourselves and say, I like the me I'm being right now, then I want to do more of that. I want to show up in this relationship. This person thinks I'm funny. This person likes my cooking. This person helps me feel and sound intelligent. And I like that about myself. And so I want to spend time with them. If we understand that principle, that if you want a long-term marriage, your job is to help your partner both be their best self and feel the feeling that they are their best self and that that's valued. If you're in so that's the lens of how good you like the other person. Well, that's the lens of how much you can get your partner to like themselves. And that's one metric. Another is, of course, competition. If you can bring more happiness and well-being to your partner than anyone else, that's a good basis for relationship sustainability. And it's also a very mature sense of love, meaning if you honestly say, I'm a shitty person, I make my partner feel like shit, but I want them to stay with me because they make me feel good, well, that's a shitty move. I mean, it may on a survival level, sure, but you're not going to feel great about yourself knowing that you'd sacrifice your partner's well-being in a heartbeat just so you could get a little bit more without working as hard. That's not going to make you feel fun. So on some level, you're going to resent your partner if they go along with that. Because if they go along with that with you as a pity cause, that's how you're going to feel. I'm a pity cause. I'm not particularly interesting. I don't make any effort to be interesting. I'm a miserable person, and the only reason my partner is with me because I bully them and intimidate them that they can't leave me. It's not a very compelling thing. You know, it's a bit like some of the nonprofit relationships. You know, they make me feel guilty. They make me feel like shit, but they make me feel even worse if I do nothing. If I give them some money, they just amp up the thing and say they need more. And if I don't give them any money, they leave me feeling like I'm ungenerous. So what's it going to be? It's not a great relationship. But when you can, as an industry, when we can, as an industry, help an individual learn about themselves, grow and respond in response to that learning, become more sustainable, and integrate the game to help them understand that when they invest in their marriage and emit presence, that their children have less trauma. When their children have less trauma, their children have less PTSD. When their children have less PTSD, they're free from their sociopathic brain. When children reach through Maslow's hierarchy of needs, survival, security, love, belonging, and then self-esteem. Now they move into contribution and transcendence, and that's what the species needs. The people who have moved into contribution and transcendence are the people who are contributing the most value. And if we can help a family do that on a sustainable gamification level and play with other families and bring out the healthy aspect of competition, compete to bring out the best in the other, to draw out, say, let's compete where I'm going to see if I can do, let's see who in the family can produce the most well-being, and to level the playing field, no money is going to be used. Dad can't always win because he's got the money. No. Let's see how many people we can make smile today, how many people we can do this, and let's play it on a level where we all have the same amount. Oh, the 5-year-old wins. The 8-year-old wins. The math whiz wins, depending on how you play the game, and family challenges and neighborhood challenges. And how did we do? And when the game can track, your neighborhood is now the top performing neighborhood in your county in terms of generating human well-being. Now, unlike the computer and technology industry where everything is, proprietary. Apple comes up with crappy jacks for its machines so that you have to buy their expensive jacks, not to make it easy for you, so that they can make more money, and you have to throw things away that could have been perfectly usable if they hadn't just, intentionally changed the jack. It's a competitive environment. We want you as our client rather than, over there, and we're going to make it hard for you. We're not going to make an easy file export or something like that. So it requires third parties to bridge the egos of our technology giants. And so this is not that kind of a dynamic. The game should be played where people can invent plugins, and any plugin can work, and any data should be reduced to a common language so that people can move over into another interface and still keep their points and track the game, and that people can move within interfaces. But that's not what we're playing. We're not playing to have everyone play on the exact same interface and exact same platform. What we're looking for is a common language that brings the species together. That a tree is a tree in any app. That points in this area become points in this area using a conscious conversion. That two of these points, based on the fact that this app registers a point differently, become one of those points. And that we actually encourage and reach out to people. Not competing against other app developers, not competing against other nonprofit blocks, unless that draws out the best, unless that leads to a more compelling thing. Because if we do have, 2 or 3 mega nonprofits all trying to develop their app platform, that's going to bring out the best in them. Microsoft was shitty as a platform until Linux and others brought out the best in Microsoft. Now Microsoft, is showing up somewhat, in an operating system. So in other words, your enemy is your friend in these dynamics, because the goal is for every human being on the planet to hit survival, security in that survival, a sense of love and belonging, a sense of self-esteem, developing their gifts, bringing those gifts to the world, and to be tracked by people in real time on that journey, and to be assisted by our nonprofit organizations in real time on that journey, and to be measured in real impact. This assistance made me feel like a loser. This assistance made me feel great. This assistance cost $250,000 and didn't work very well. This assistance cost 10 cents and I just got a 10% boost. 10% boost for 10 cents. Wow, what a great return on investment. And that brings me to another area of marketing, investment opportunities. I'm a bargain hunter, but let's turn this around. Rather than buying the cheapest little skimpy item I don't need from a knockoff of, whatever, and polluting, I want to find the eye surgeon anywhere in the world who will do the eye surgery for the poor for the least amount of dollars. I want to find, and I want to vote on them and spend $2 to clear up someone's eyesight. I want to plant a tree where it costs 10 cents rather than $2. I want to help stop a war that would cost 10 cents on the dollar to stop and take $10 to repair the damage. This is where I want to do, and I want to see opportunities anywhere around the world. Who can provide an opportunity for a deal in the nonprofit sector where I can actually track it and with ratings? And that's another thing. When the end user, when the locals can vote 1 to 5 star like Amazon, this nonprofit came in and planted our rainforest. They didn't listen to us. They didn't use the right trees. One of them raped our daughter. And there's another nonprofit. That's the ratings. When anyone can participate, and we have 360 Vision, and this other organization, they taught us about tree planting. They left us with trees to plant for ourselves, doubling the amount of trees that got planted for dollars spent. We learned about our forest. We learned about sustainable agriculture. When this nonprofit came in and left, we felt like decent human beings with empowered knowledge, and we're now continuing the legacy, and we'll send you pictures uploaded to Google Documents or whatever, or the app on a regular basis, and here we are if you want to plant any more trees. When we can get feedback, 360-degree vision, and again, the software needs to be built so that that is possible, and then it can be filled in retroactively, within time, over time, by anyone who's willing to supply that data. Now we have, going back to the volunteer beginning, where if you can use my time and my talent, I'm way more interested in engaging. You see, because I don't feel at the moment like donating $1,000 to planting trees. But I do feel more interested in spending $3,000 to take a trip to a rainforest, time off work, learn about tree species, learn where my trees got planted, and take photos for everyone else and upload them all, and see that this made people happy. That the people who planted the trees and people liked my photos, and so I bought a drone and, did this and made people happy. And now I have some conversations going with some of these people who I like because we're tree planters and we're excited about that. And did you see about this? And no, I didn't try. Or they need trees in Guatemala after this earthquake. Okay, well I'll chip in $5 there, and we'll do it together. A sense of community, love, and belonging, meeting the need, self-esteem, meeting the need. I like who I am. I like who I'm becoming. This is the real game. And when this is done at a 10x level, there is zero need for marketing. Your friends are the one who excitedly tell them. You see them with a new glow, a new app, etc. And what are you doing? Well, I got my chemical load down. My game right this week is I'm changing my diet in this way and this way and this way, because my goal is to reduce the chemical load to my child by 20%. And they've done studies that show that, while there's 50,000 chemicals and more people are born with traceable levels of that chemicals in infants, and it's correlated with increased mental emotional disease, cancer, etc. I'm doing something differently. We're going to actually do a cleanse. We're going to do this. And so my goal is that when my baby is born, I hit 20% below national average on chemical load for my baby. That's my goal this week. Wow. Well, what are the chemicals? Well, there's this dioxin, there's this here, this, I particularly want to get rid of this. Well, where is that? Well, the FDA is doing shit. It's in here, it's in here, it's in here. Now, how about we test things as a consumer group rather than having, untested things and the typical marketing spend of corporations? How about we collaborate? How about we have an app feature for collaboration where this app becomes increasingly potent and valuable for the well-being of human beings and families? And someone can say it'll cost 50 cents. If 1,000 of us all put up 50 cents, we'll have the complete chemical specs of these pajamas. We'll have the complete chemical specs of this fruit. So oranges at Whole Foods, when's the last time we all partnered to test those? Okay, send one orange off to a lab. We all get the results, and the data is shared to the entire global community. And maybe Whole Foods cleans up its act a bit. You see, this is a partnering dynamic. It's a vision. It's a vision of an active ecology. We're starting to become as intelligent as mushrooms, which have mycelial networks that talk to each other back and forth throughout an entire forest. There's minerals over here. This is going on over here, etc. We start to become a species, as opposed to the myopia of the traumatized, scared individuals we've been turned into by a chauvinistic cult that doesn't even teach us a single hour of emotional literacy in school, let alone the science of the human heart, the biology of emotion, how you mix this emotion and you get this emotion. You mix blue and you mix yellow and you get green. Human emotion, the single driving force in all human action and all human history? Nah, why would we want to study that, right? Let's study algebra. So when we can supply meaningful well-being and value using a whole new order of consciousness where your competitor and enemy is your friend, we have an entire new world here. You have everyone jumping on that bandwagon from their own excitement and continuing because we're doing our job. And there's enough room for anyone in the nonprofit sector willing to play that game. And there's no room for the isolated, marginalized, refusing to share data, becoming increasingly incompetent relative to those interacting with the hive. Why would you give money to an ineffective system and reward that? You need to teach that individual through example, that partnering, that visioning, that transparency, that growing, that helping other people be their best selves is a more compelling game. Thanks for joining me on this riff. Thanks for brainstorming. I always learn through exploring ideas and talking. So it's an exciting thing to think about and to wonder at what point will the average nonprofit reach a level of awareness and confidence in a vision such as this, that there's a certainty to show up and invest along these lines and partner together. At what point? Because that's the point where we're going to see 10x change in the nonprofit sector.